Hello and a warm welcome to the workshop in Africa for Africa, weaving solutions for textile circularity challenges. I'm Hannes McNulty, Senior Green Industry Advisor at the Green Industry Platform, and I would like to really thank you for being here today with us. This workshop is a joint effort of the Green Industry Platform and Global Opportunities for Sustainable Development Goals, or GO for SDGs for short. And it is also being supported by the UN Environment Programme's EU-funded INTEX project. These initiatives are all actively engaged in supporting the uptake of circularity measures in the textile sector in Africa, with a particular focus on SMEs. But first, what actually is circularity? Well, circularity looks at how to go beyond the current take, make, and dispose economic model and instead focus on a more sustainable use of materials. A first step in circularity is improving the direct reuse of end products as well as their repair or remanufacture before the end of their usable lifespan. But circularity then also considers how to recycle or repurpose end products that are at the end of their use. And finally, circularity importantly involves building all of these steps into the very design of products to ensure the most efficient reuse or recycling. So examples of how our initiatives are supporting circularity in the African textile sector include, one, the new IGO solution from the Green Industry Platform being deployed with the help of Go for SDGs in several different African countries, which aims to provide large numbers of SMEs with easier access to resource efficiency support services adapted to their specific needs. And secondly, the INTEX project, through which African SMEs and other relevant stakeholders are being trained on the eco-innovation approach, which guides companies in incorporating circularity and resilience into every aspect of their business strategy and underlying business models, operations, and products. Now, a key focus of this workshop will therefore be to explore what restricts and or supports the business case for circularity within SMEs. Our expert speakers will share their insights and experiences from the many different aspects within the textile value chain within Africa, and also enter into an open learning exchange with all of you in the audience. As a result, throughout today's discussion, please do submit all your questions and comments, as your engagement with the speakers and each other will be quite a unique opportunity to feed into the current and future efforts to improve circularity within the African textile sector. Now, just to note that for questions to the speakers, please submit these in the Zoom, not Whova Q&A section, while comments and general discussion, even between yourselves, can then take place in the chat section. And you'll be happy to hear that a full recording of this workshop will also be available here on Whova very shortly after the event. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's event, Zubeida Zwavel. Zubeida is the Executive Director of the Center for African Resource Efficiency and Sustainability, an NGO based in South Africa, and that supports SMEs by creating awareness of and giving access to sustainability mechanisms, as well as furthering women's roles within sustainable business. So now, without further ado, Zubeida, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to today's workshop.
Thanks, Hannes.
I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Hannes. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. As you can hear with his introduction, there's been quite a lot of things happening within circularity and sustainability, contributing to SDG 12, and looking at the textile value chain itself. And obviously, we are looking at a regional aspect as well. In Africa, there's been great strides in the growth of the textiles and garment industry. And we also have, with this industrial growth, there comes a lot of challenges as well, looking at the environmental impact, hence the reason why we're focusing on circularity. As we know, the textiles industry sector has quite a bit of issues related to climate change, greenhouse gas emissions from shipping, water consumption, wastewater pollution from dyes, chemicals, water consumption throughout the value chain of the textiles and garment industry, high energy consumption. This is the reason why we have this discussion. The basis of the discussion is obviously to encourage circularity through building partnerships between the brands and the retailers and the SMEs. And the objectives of this workshop is to support the brands, retailers, and how you can actually collaborate on circularity efforts across shared value chains to provide a uniform and fair sustainability procurement process for SME suppliers. So as we know, partnerships, you can grow with that and you can learn quite a bit and also expand in terms of business opportunities for the SMEs. As you know, eco-innovation, for example, provides a good new business model. This is the future of the textiles industry, the future of the economics thereof. And in terms of that, what are these opportunities that can be accessed by the SMEs? We have a very, very experienced team today, well represented through the different countries within Africa. And I would be introducing them, and they will provide very, very valuable inputs as well. We encourage discussion as much as possible. We also encourage you to use the chat box and Q&A. And firstly, I will give you just an introduction and allow each of them to then open up their camera and then switch on and give their background. We'll start with Mr. Isaac Maluki, who owns a garment manufacturing company in Kenya called Shona. Mr. Maluki, you can switch on and then introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, morning, evening, everybody who's here. Thank you very much. My name is Isaac Maluki. I'm the director of Shona EPZ Limited. It's a garment manufacturer in Kenya that has been in operation for 3.5 years. And we've been exporting our garments to Europe and the US, but mainly to the US. We are proud to be employing 600 workers right now, and are looking forward to grow our business in this region for exports. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Maluki. That's quite a large company, actually, 600 employees. And then next we have Mr. Karfa Yacoro, who is the director at Cabez GIE, which is a cooperative offering work to artisans in the Burkina Faso region and providing global reach. His experience, can you give a little bit of background to your organization and yourself, please?
Thank you, Zubeida. Hello, everyone. My name is Karfa Yacoro. I'm from Burkina Faso. I'm the director of Cabez. We are producing Danfani fabric and we are selling it on international markets. We are working with organic cotton, and Cabez is founded in 2014 here in Burkina Faso. We are selling our fabric in Europe, USA, and Japan. I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's quite a far reach, and you can see that these organizations are really making an impact to the smaller, providing fair trade and good creation of jobs as well. Next, we have Ms. Fatouma Sawadogo Maiga, and she's from Intresen ITC, also an organization focusing on ethical fashion and the creation of good jobs in fair trade in the Burkina Faso and rather global reach as well. Thank you, Fatouma.
Thank you, Zubeida. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. It depends on which where you are. My name is Fatouma Maiga, and I'm the national coordinator of the Ethical Fashion Initiative in Burkina Faso. Our project aims to connect artisans to the national market with brands that need to buy some artisan fabrics, mainly produced with organic cotton. And we are working with Karfa, who is the director of Cabez, our social enterprise here in Burkina Faso. Thank you, Zubeida and Anes, for the opportunity given to me this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Fatouma. The last but definitely not least is the owner of a large retailer brand in Kenya called Vivo, and this is Mrs. Wandia Gichuru.
Hi, thanks, Zubeida and Hannes. So my name is Wandia Gichuru. I'm the founder and CEO of a fashion business in Kenya. That's basically made up of 3 separate but connected parts. We own our own fashion labels, Vivo Woman, Safari, and Zoya, and a network of 16 stores across the country. We also own a manufacturing business. And 2 years ago, we launched Shop Zetu, which is an e-commerce marketplace dedicated to fashion, beauty, and accessory brands. Collectively, we employ about 200 people and over 70% are women.
Totally impressive, everybody, I must say, and there's so many things happening within sustainability within this region and within the textiles and garment industry. I'll go right ahead, and to start the conversation, we have obviously some questions to the panelists, which we would then have feedback from them. Later on, we'd encourage you, the audience, to come up with different types of questions for them. And firstly, I would start with Isaac, and the question to you is, what are the 2 main challenges you face when it comes to communication and partnerships along your value chain? An interesting one.
That's a very interesting one indeed. Thank you again. Well, for us, the main challenges that we face is we can start with language barriers, because our suppliers are from non-English speaking countries. And so whenever we make any communication, we always have quite a lot of language barriers. Then as well, when we look at the time differences, we have a bit of a problem there on communication, because as we want to get real-time answers for the questions that we have, we can't really get that. So time, we end up taking about a week to get solutions instead of just a few hours, because by the time our suppliers are communicating to us, we are still asleep. And by the time we are communicating to them, then they've just gone to sleep. So we have to wait for the next day to get that done. The other thing is obviously, as we're talking about the time difference, our buyers also are in a very different time difference. So that communication break down, sometimes you have broken telephones. It becomes quite a big of a challenge. In terms of partnerships, well, building new partnerships has been a bit of a challenge, because currently we know that the buyers are already buying garments from different parts of the world, mainly in Asia. And so for us to try and move that relationship that they have created for very many years into a relationship that they have to start with us in Africa has become obviously a bit of a challenge, because then we have to prove to them, that we can manufacture well, we can be more efficient, our prices are right, and that they can trust to give us some of the work to start building the relationship. And then obviously finding the reliable partners means that we have to take a lot of extra effort to mainly travel out to the buyers in Europe, in Americas, and just to get to meet them, create that relationship.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people who cannot be able to do that part, then the process takes a lot longer. So those are the challenges that I think
And those are very real, common challenges that actually affects your production and ultimately, the rands and cents, not rands and cents, rather turnover. So next we have Mr. Karfa Yacoro. The question to you we have today is, what are the most effective ways of communicating to potential brand clients about an SME's proactive sustainability? Innovation, performance, given SMEs' lack of bargaining power and difficulties matching pricing of larger scale businesses. So what is the potential that you can actually effectively communicate with them? So you go ahead.
Thank you, Zubeida. Thank you, everyone. we must change our way to working on wearing a style. According to me, we must use organic cotton in all our brands. So it's important to use organic cotton to make fabrics, and all clean also must include it in the process. Organic cotton to grow without pesticides and chemical fertilizer. It also contributes to preserve environment, and it's also help everyone who is wearing organic fabric to be very well self between who is wearing other fabrics. Also, it's important to have fabric and other things made with organic cotton. For example, here in Burkina Faso, we are selling tote bag made with organic cotton. This process service had to fight plastic bag on the market and on the area. Because the bag fabric are reusable and biodegradable, you can use them for much time, and you can use them for many times, and this bag then have a negative impact on the environment. So it's important to have new opportunity with using tote bag, and it's also important to use organic cotton in all the process of transformation. So I think these two points can also improve the innovation and performance for the small enterprise, and it also helps us to preserve environment.
No, I think there's definitely huge benefit in having something like organic cotton products, and there's many other types of natural fiber products that's through Africa that can actually be promoted as well. And there's huge opportunity. And then increasing this market share is beneficial. Fatouma, a question to you. How can SMEs stand out to potential brand clients? You've got huge experience in this. Obviously, brand clients that's concerned about sustainability.
Thank you, Zubeida. In my point of view, if SMEs want to stand out from potential customer of brands, they must work on their business model, but also they must work on the way of production, method of production, but also the strategy of communication. All these are included in the business model. I think that by this, they must show more transparency to customers or to brands, and transparency on the way of their production, who is produced, what is the raw material used, where is it from, its quality, and the way it is produced, I mean. But also they need to offer a traceable products. I mean by this, the fact to know where is the origin, where is the product come from. And also for me, it's important to communicate on how these SMEs integrate the value of circularity and sustainability in the value chain. And by this, they can talk about the way they use to recycle, to avoid wasting, and also the impact, the impact of the action on the environment, on producer, and also what they do to reduce the carbon impacts. For me, all these is important to be more competitive in the market, and also to get more customer, and to stand out from the potential other small and medium enterprises.
Yeah, I think that's quite important. And it's not only the brands and the retailers that actually ask these types of questions. It's actually ultimately you and me that buys this clothing or garment ultimately that wants to know this types of information. You'll be surprised how much people turn around and look at swing tickets and say, well, what is the carbon impact of this? And this is what is growing the demand for sustainable and ethical types of products. So we have a question to Ms. Wandia. Mrs. Wandia, how can we then incentivize these brands and SME suppliers to work together on circularity? So building that partnerships, and when there is so much pressure on keeping prices low for brands and suppliers alike.
Thanks for the question. So our mission at Vivo, and my own personal mission, is really to see Africa dress herself. And we've looked at fashion industries across the world, and they have been such major contributors to culture, to creativity, to self-expression, but also to employment generation, to tax contribution, to economies generally. And we see no reason why our 54 countries and the 1.2 billion people that live on the continent shouldn't have those same opportunities. So personally, I'm most interested in seeing and supporting African brands scale and succeed. So when you ask about circularity, I'm going to answer it from that perspective of a local brand. And yes, from that perspective, the pressure to keep our prices low is extremely high, not only because we have to compete against cheap imports from Asia and other parts of the world, but also because we need to compete, and I'll say compete in inverted commas, against the ever increasing amount of what we call mitumba, which is secondhand clothing that is being shipped to our countries. So when you ask what kind of support we would need from developed countries and other parts of the world, I have 5 recommendations that I'd like to make. One is we really need the rest of the world to find other ways of disposing of, recycling, repurposing, or simply just keeping your used clothing in your own countries. In particular, the poor quality fast fashion products, and to really just stop dumping it on all of us. Especially now that so much of it is increasingly ending up in landfills anyway. So we're just becoming the backyard dumping ground for a lot of these products, and that has to stop. Secondly, we want you to see us not only as the manufacturing partner for your brands, but to also be interested in supporting, purchasing, distributing our brands as well. There's a reason that our brands are resonating so well in our markets. And we know from experience that they appeal to many people in your markets as well. And so helping promote these brands is another way to support. Thirdly, we are interested in continuing to receive technical assistance and support, especially when it comes to helping us access and utilize technology, data-driven approaches to drive the kind of efficiencies and sustainability that you're talking about in design and production, in distribution, etc. Fourth, we ask that you increase your support and efforts directed at opening up trade across the African continent, and to really help us make that a reality. As a Kenyan company, our company, We import over $1 million worth of fabric every year. It's very unfortunate that it's easier for us to import that from China than it is to do so from Ethiopia, which is right next door. And our borders touch each other. And yet it is not simple. Logistics, taxes, import duties, etc., make it very difficult. And lastly, fifth, we invite you to really engage with us as genuine business partners and to consider making real investments, for example, equity investments in our fashion and textile businesses. The opportunities are real and they're very exciting. Our own business, for example, started with just $100,000 and is now a multi-million-dollar business that on average has grown over 40% year on year for 10 years consecutively. And we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the opportunities that exist. We're just one of very many promising brands. So we invite you to take a closer look. For example, our marketplace, Shop Zetu, carries over 100 local brands, many of which are at a real growth stage. So we're here, we're on the ground, we are making things happen, and we're very open to partner with people who are forward thinking, who share our vision and our commitment to seeing our fashion industry and textile industry grow and thrive. And so, as we would say in Swahili, karibu, you are very welcome.
That's so exciting. I must say you resonate a message, I think, that goes across all of us. And this is an Africa for Africa workshop as well. Those points that you made were extremely important to everybody in terms of when it comes from dumping to assisting also, you know, helping in terms of helping your brand grow and seeing the challenges that you have as well on board, which is challenges that goes throughout Africa, probably abroad as well. But just looking at the amount of textiles and just speaking personally from South Africa, bringing in the fact that we also had a very huge textiles industry and it shrunk because of the large amount of imports. So these are real challenges that are being experienced. I do have a question in the Q&A. Let me just go there. So in terms of, so it's coming from Ilea Neudeker, and he or she asked the question, they would be interested in the amount of volumes, markets, shares of these sustainable products, and how do they deal with marketing competition with conventional fabrics and products. So that is something that was related to, for instance, Wandia mentioned something like that. Isaac, maybe you would like to add on to it, to that question, or do you want to? And Karfa, you were also typing. Maybe I should open the question up to Isaac quickly and then.
Okay. Okay, fine. I think what I'm trying to understand is should be interested in finding out the kind of volumes that we are manufacturing, that we deal with, and the market shares. Basically, what I can say is that the opportunity for Africa is huge. I mean, Africa is not even producing 1% of America's total garment demand. And so the opportunity for setting up that manufacturing space in Africa is really, really huge. And then think about that and then look at the opportunity that we have ourselves to produce for our own countries, for the continent as well. I mean, we are just looking at destabilizing where we lazily, if I may say, import everything to start actively being the ones who are manufacturing for ourselves, and also being able to supply for the rest of the world. And, you know, that will build up a lot because one is that we have a different body figures. I'm sure Wandia will be able to tell you that, you know, when you're buying things from Asia for the African market, unless you have them adjusted again, it really doesn't fit, or even for the European market or the American market. So here we are now starting to look at being able to start doing something for ourselves, for our market, which is one of the wonderful things that I love about how Vivo has grown. And then at the same time, also being able to develop ourselves and say, what else can we do? So on our side, we are looking at manufacturing over 300,000 items, knitted items per month. And we're looking at, with the clients that we are talking to right now, we're looking at how we can triple that in the year 2022, because some of the major importers in this country, I mean, from America, are actively looking at how they can move Africa to become the second largest exporters to America by 2024. So this is an opportunity that we really have to take into the market. And the competition really is just on the price of manufacturing. But then the benefit we have is we have the AGOA license. So when someone is going to be importing $8 million worth of garments to America, they're looking at saving about $1.7 million on not paying duty. So, you know, if the price is still higher than in Asia, it's compensated by the tax benefit that they get on the other side. So that would be my contribution on this.
Very exciting to see this growth actually within these organizations and even more. I'm not sure if we can go touch on what is the market share of sustainable products, and this is probably more related to Fatouma and Karfa, but maybe you can type the answer if you would like to do that, and give Ilya. That is also something that, you know, is, and I encourage the audience to then go forth and go and look at the organizations. I'm not sure if, I think on WOVA, you probably have an ability to see where everybody is coming from, the different organizations, and then see what they are doing. And there's lots of exciting things happening in KBs as well. Maybe we should just go to the next. Fatima, you want to answer that? Do you know what the market share of the sustainable products is in Burkina Faso, perhaps? Is it quite big? Is it growing?
Thank you, Zubeida. Yes, I think that as for Kenya, in Burkina also the economic is growing, and there are huge opportunity for African companies here in textile area or where else. And in our government, we are trying to promote the local consuming and production locally, but also try to reach other markets in order to get in competitivity, if I can say it in English, and also with the AGOA laws, we have the change to export to the United States and where else we have low tax. So I think that those who want to invest in Africa, this is a new market, if I can say that. We have to try to find some tips and to see what is the real demand for market according to circularity, according to sustainability, and try to be different from others. And I think that we can do something very good.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so many exciting things happening, and there's just growth and more growth on the cards for different for the textiles value chain and the garment industry. We have another question in terms of from an anonymous attendee. Do you think African SMEs can make real change in circularity before government policy has been made? Example, in changing import taxes between African countries. This is quite a challenging question. Anybody of the panelists want to take on that question? Do you think real change? Wandia?
Yeah, again, I'm going to answer it from the perspective of a brand. So I think the private sector in many of our countries has to continue to look for ways to grow and succeed, despite necessarily the government policy always being ahead of us. So I would say while we wait for policies around inter-country trade, there are other ways to partner. There's no reason why a designer in Burkina Faso couldn't partner with us, and we would carry their brand in Kenya and perhaps make the product locally using their designs, if there's an NDA properly signed or whatever. And then we can build that brand's footprint in East Africa on their behalf, because in East Africa, there is a trade agreement. And the same for West Africa. We could find a partner in West Africa and say, look, why don't you be our Vivo partner on the ground? So I do think there are ways. I mean, you know, the government will by nature take a lot longer time to sort of get to where we need them to be. And so we don't wait. We continue to explore and find ways to keep moving.
Yeah, and I think that is the advantage if you have that leading edge and that competitive advantage to grow as well, and to grow your markets instead of waiting for policies and regulations to be put in place.
And in a way, it would help with you know, circularity, because it means you don't then have to ship product back and forth, you know, so all the environmental issues that come with that. If you know, if we can find ways using, we're currently in the process of developing an entire collection that will be virtual, using digital tools and all of that stuff. So by making 180 pieces, we'll be able to offer 4,000 different options and build our system so that we are able to produce within 24 hours of an order being received. And so you're making on demand, as opposed to, because the big risk in fashion, and you know, one of the big risks is dead stock. And so when you're trying to predict way in advance how much people will buy, you're likely to over predict or under predict. And so I think the more that we can get into just in time, or you know, being able to produce customized orders, I think a big contribution towards sustainability.
Yeah. So there's another question here from Yvonne Motoa, and she asks, for Shona and Vivo, do you recycle or have a system to upcycle your clothes and fabrics after use?
So, well, that's a tough one. Well, what we do is we try to reduce as much waste as possible. And so where we can be able to make something else with whatever would have come out as waste, we do that. So like of late, due to COVID, what we've been doing is any part where there's wasted fabric, we actually make masks that we can use, or we can put some of the cut panels together and put some make some coverings for our tables, our machines, and things like that. So we see how we can be able to reuse them. And then also the companies that we use to then come and collect waste, we try and make sure that we engage those that deal in recycling more than those who will just go and dump it out somewhere else. And so we encourage them to recycle and to also tell us how they did that recycling, so that we can see that we are following through on things like that.
Yeah, that's quite important to have a responsible, and to also look at extended producer responsibility, seeing what actually happens to your garments, or if there's offcuts or anything. And you know, they could say that they using it in a sustainable manner, but it could be incinerated or anything like that. There's another question from Bettina Heller. What kind of support would you require from other actors, such as policymakers or technical organizations, to support your shift to circular and sustainable business models? What kind of support would you require? Would this support be technical support? Would it require training, capacity building from other actors, such as policymakers or technical organizations? Karfa, do you have perhaps any idea of what kind of support would you further require from actors to promote your products in your organization?
What kind of support here to make new production? We need to training. We need to training the artisan. If we have a new order from a client which need for a new training, so we make training with artisan, and we also need to buy new material production material to improve our production. For example, we are now trying to buy new loom to improve the production in the workshop. So I can say we need two kinds of support. First is training, and second is the buying of new production materials.
So that's actual capital investment that you're talking about. Fatouma, you want to add to that?
Thank you, Zubeida. In addition to what Karfa just said, I think that SMEs need training support and technical support. But also, I think that it's important for government and other NGOs and other organizations to talk about circularity, to talk more about it, because it's a new concept here. You know, some customers don't know the importance of that. So if the communication is focused on the inconvenience of some practices and the importance of recycling and the importance of working together, as Wandia said, her point was very interesting, according to working together, and also to erase the frontier between countries, between SMEs, in order to allow us to work together. I think that in East Africa, the concept of circularity is more developed than here. Here we are trying to make people understand that organic cotton is very good for environment and their self, but it's quite difficult because the price is higher than the conventional cotton one. And I said training before because I think that if people are trained in how to introduce the circularity concept in the value chain, in cotton transformation, on what else, I think that this can help them to have an improved business model. Yeah. And also the technical support is important because for instance, to use plastic waste in the production, people need to be trained in that. Karfa and I are talking about weaving because it's our work here in Burkina Faso. So sorry for that, because the examples are only focused on weaving. You know, some workshop here use some plastic bags in the way of production. I think that if they have the support for them, it can be a step in a big step in the way to help in implementing circularity concept in SMEs in Burkina Faso, but also to change the mind of the customer. I think that if the customer change their minds, the brand also will follow up. So for me, all these are linked.
Yeah, and I think those different training, capacity building of the different stakeholders of consumers, not only from a top-down approach with policies and retailers, but also a bottom-up approach as well. There's two questions. We're running out of time quickly. There's two questions for Wandia. With regard to your organization, what is the limiting factor preventing your growth? Access to finance, lack of skilled labor, use imports, energy access, any of those things. What is limiting your growth?
Yeah, a quick answer, I would say not just us individually, but as a sector as a whole, I would say it is the used clothes import. Kenya, I think, has probably the highest per capita amount of secondhand clothing that's coming into the market, and it's growing at 20-30% year on year. It's insane. But also accessing fashion fabrics, because the textile industry hasn't, there hasn't been much growth in terms of local fabrics in the regions. So, and the ones that are being made aren't suitable for fashion, and accessing those fabrics even from other parts of the continent, like I said earlier. Otherwise, we're good. I mean, the skills are here. You know, we are making for the rest of the world. Surely we can make for ourselves. We have what we need, but you know, some of these bigger issues are affecting the sector as a whole.
But I think also what is important, just I implore the audience and yourselves to read. There's a document that came out on secondhand clothing and that impact that it actually has, and that growth for within Africa as well. And that is a very important factor that we need to take into consideration. And also another question to Wandia with regard to what is the most limiting factor prevent? Oh, that's the other one. It's the same one, sorry. And it was presented twice. Let me see. So we have about 3 minutes left. There's one last question here to Fatouma. What is coming from Yvonne again, Motua? You say the people have to be trained in circularity. When do you think that education should start, and which entity should carry out these trainings? I would say from the womb, but I'll let you elaborate.
Thank you for this question. I think that it's important to talk about circularity maybe at school first, because I think that they need to change minds. The fact to know that a product or a fabric can be reused, because it's important to keep the environment, to use less raw material, and also to protect health and the environment. I think that the training is, first of all, I mean, in families at school, but also in the SMEs, because if NGOs or projects or programs or governments notice that there are more and more SMEs that want to involve these practices in the value chain, but they don't know how to do it, I think that sometimes make some webinar like this, and also try to reach them and explain what is the concept, how can they do it. I think that it's, for me, it's the way to implement it in our.
And that would increase the demand for sustainable goods ultimately. Karfa, you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you, Zubeida. I will add just something. Fatouma saying about training. Here we are trying to use yarn with plastic to make fabric. You know, actually, all of our workers know how to make fabric with cotton, but they don't know how to use two raw materials to make the same fabric. So they need to be trained to know better how to use cotton and plastic to make fabric. We try this experiment with one of our workshops in Bobo-Dioulasso, and we got first result by next month here in Ouagadougou. So it's important to introduce training on circularity concept in the workshop now. It's very important.
I agree. Thank you so much. It's 3:20, and I must say that we have Fatouma, I see your hand. I just wanted to address the fact that Isaac has answered a question there from one of the people as well. Thank you for that, Isaac. There's so many things happening. Fatouma, you wanted to quickly add because we're running out of time.
Yes, thank you, Zubeida. That is so interesting. So I had something to add. You know, our project in Burkina try to sensitize people against the using of plastic bag. And right now we are produce 7,000 tote bags, and we distribute it.
Fabric, yeah.
Really, yes. Yeah. And we produce it from the waste of fabrics that sweaters had in the workshop. We recycling fabrics to do it. I think that this can be an example for a way to train and to sensitize people. That's all.
Thank you so much. I thank you all for your time, for your very, very valuable time, as well as the audience, and also giving us the opportunity and this platform for this information. I encourage each and every one of you. I learned so much over the last 2 days, to be honest, of each organization that is the panelists right here. And I encourage the audience to go out there and find out exactly what is happening in those organizations. Hannes maybe could give an idea of where you can get access to them. But on Wova, I hope that you have all the contact details of the organizations. Add them on LinkedIn, try to find out more exciting things happening in Africa, people. So thank you so much for your time.